The October attack that shocked many people around the world. Hamas launched a deadly attack, and Israel says more than 1,000 people, mostly civilians, were killed. More than 200 others were taken hostage, including women and children, and at least 130 remain in captivity in Gaza. Israel Prime Minister took a decision to eliminate Hamas, secure the release of the hostages, and ensure that Gaza will never again constitute a threat to Israel. This was the start of bombardment of Gaza. Thousands have been killed, including women and children. The infrastructure destroyed and the healthcare system damaged.
Well, they've been claiming this for 16 years. The first time I heard it was in 2008-9 during the Operation Cast Lead, and they have never shown any proof. And the funny thing is that the Americans are starting to say the same lies. If they have the proof, show it. The evidence, put it on the table. We can discuss it, number one. Number two, if you are attacking a mixed civilian and military target, the precaution for the civilians has priority over the military benefit of that attack. So whether you choose the Geneva Convention or just normal humanity, these attacks, not only on Shifa, but on all the hospitals in North Gaza, are deplorable. And it's part of a colonial strategy, not to fight military targets, but to fight the people. And I guess the South African people are very familiar with the brutality of colonial politics. What Israel is doing in Palestine is occupy. It is to expand the occupation year by year, new settlements, new colonies, and it is to deprive the Palestinian people of any decent human rights.
The UN boss called for humanitarian corridors and pause in fighting so that aid can be delivered in Gaza. This did not stop Israel's bombardment of the enclave.
As long as we have babies, Holocaust survivors, entire families, prisoners, innocent prisoners at Hamas tunnels, there is nothing to discuss about anything that is regarding to humanitarian aid. Release the prisoners, then we might think about humanitarian aid.
A notion supported by Israel's defense force. In many countries around the world, including South Africa, calls for ceasefire grew louder.
The Israeli government has perfected the way in which it does not follow and implement decisions that are taken at the UN, at the Security Council, or in other world forums. And they've become a law unto themselves internationally. And this is totally unacceptable. So we are once again calling for a ceasefire, and we're now saying that there needs to be follow-up by those international agencies that are supposed to ensure that there's a rule of law, there's order in the world. And the ICC is one of those. And the UN Security Council needs to also follow this matter up, because it's completely unacceptable that innocent people, in the way that it's been happening, where there's collective punishment that results in the deaths of so many people. It is unprecedented in the world, and it must stop.
The war in Palestine is not a holy war, it's an evil war. Because even here, the apartheid African regime used to say they are the chosen ones, used to say they are children of God and we are animals. So when the Minister of Defense of Israel calls Palestinians animals, we know what he means, because we were called animals ourselves here in South Africa.
Israel says it has a right to defend itself.
1,200 Israelis have been butchered by Hamas in an instruction given by Hamas leadership. Civilians targeted. Over 100 Israelis, many of them civilians, women, children, elderly have been abducted and are being held unlawfully in the Gaza Strip. There is no moral equivalence. Israel does not target civilians. Israel goes out of its way, sometimes putting its forces at risk in order to safeguard civilians. The situation on the other side is precarious, but that question needs to be directed to Hamas. Why did they attack Israeli civilians? Why did they come into our communities? Why did they butcher Israelis? Why did they think that that was a good idea? And what did they expect Israel to do? We cannot be expected not to protect our civilians, because Hamas, this terrorist organization that has created a terrorist army, hides behind the civilians of Gaza. The Palestinians of Gaza are not our enemy.
South Africa requested the International Criminal Court to intervene. With little movement from the ICC, South Africa has now taken the matter to the International Court of Justice. Both South Africa and Israel are the signatories of the Genocide Convention.
We are using the Article 9, which is a contentious procedure in terms of the convention. It means that we have a dispute with the State of Israel on whether they are complying with the duties under the convention. The Article 1 of the convention very clearly states that all parties to the convention have a duty to prevent or punish the crime of genocide. Based on what we have seen and the available evidence that has emerged in Gaza over the last month, that Israel has indeed, in our view and in the view of many, contravening the articles of the convention, are indeed perpetrating the crime of genocide.
This has angered Israel.
The State of Israel emphatically condemns South Africa's decision to play advocate for the devil and to make itself criminally complicit with the perpetrators of the October 7 massacre. On October 7, South Africa openly aligned itself with the Hamas rapist regime when it blamed Israel for Hamas's violation of the ceasefire and covered up Hamas's crimes against humanity. It is now aiding and abetting that machinery of genocide. Collaborating with the perpetrators of genocide is, alas, not new to South Africa, which backed Omar al-Bashir after he was indicted for genocide in Darfur. In giving political and legal cover to the October 7 massacre and the Hamas human shield strategy, South Africa has made itself criminally complicit with Hamas's campaign of genocide against our people. It shares culpability for the tragic loss of human life. The State of Israel will appear before the International Court of Justice at The Hague to dispel South Africa's absurd blood libel. How tragic that the rainbow nation that prides itself on fighting racism will be fighting pro bono for anti-Jewish racists. We have no doubt that after the Jewish state brings to justice the perpetrators of the bloodiest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, history will judge South Africa for abetting the modern heirs of the Nazis. We assure South Africa's leaders, history will judge you, and it will judge you without mercy.
Ahead of the hearing, a former ICC prosecutor says this is an important case.
South Africa must be really applauded for taking this stand. It is being supported by many other countries, and we hope that the outcome will be favorable. Israel will defend itself to show why it is not, why the allegations against them are not true or how they are unfounded.
South Africa has appointed a heavyweight team consisting of local and international lawyers. Pretoria is requesting the ICJ to make the provisional orders on these issues. Israel's compliance with its obligations under the Genocide Convention not to engage in genocide. Request for provisional measures be considered urgently at the court's earliest possible opportunity. South Africa reserves its right to request additional provisional measures to prevent irreparable harm to the rights at issue in this case. South Africa reserves the right to revise, supplement, or amend the terms of this application, as well as the grounds evoked. Former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke will be part of the panel of judges who will hear the case. Sophie Mkweni, SABC News, Johannesburg.